All right, you ready?
Yep.
Welcome back, friends.
Welcome back.
It's time for another episode of Strange and Beautiful Book Club, Deep Cuts.
Dune edition.
Someday I'm going to be able to use the effects and then not giggle afterwards, but today is not that day. Well, welcome back, friends. I'm a little sultry. I haven't been sultry in a while, but it's seasonal allergy and cold season, so here we are. We do have quite a few things going on. Just want to throw it out there. We've got a merch store. Actually, this is going to be our deep cut, so let's talk about that on the regular Strange and Beautiful Book Club.
Yeah, this one's going to be out of time.
Yeah. So we just talked about Jodorowsky's Dune, which was a wild ride. And then we hopped off that train and took some LSD and then hopped on another train, and that we're going to call Dune 1984.
David Lynch edition.
Actually, we watched the Alan Smithee cut because David Lynch hates this movie so deeply. He refuses to be involved in any of the cuts,
Right, the theatrical release has his name on it.
Yeah.
But then when they did the extended edition,
He was like, fuck that shit. Take my name off of it. He even took his name off as a writer. Nothing. He took his name off it completely. Yeah, he was like, Alan Smith, you directed it. Somebody else. I don't want to be on it. Don't associate this with me at all. And I mean, fair. I've watched this movie a lot. I've probably watched the Alan Smithee cut more than I've watched the regular cut because, like a lot of times on Sci-Fi, this is the cut that would be shown.
Yeah, and watching it this time, I didn't recognize any scenes as like, wait, I haven't seen this scene before. So I think probably most of the times that I've watched the 1984 Dune has been the extended version.
Yeah. And this has the grandmother, what do they call it? The great-grandmother of a storm. This is the great-grandmother of all exposition dumps at the beginning. Like, you thought text scroll was bad. You thought voiceover montage. You thought voiceover montage was bad. Oh.
How about camera panning over a matte painting and zooming in?
For like a full 20 minutes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Of like, okay, so we used to have computers and then we had this jihad and then now we don't have computers or we don't have computers that can perform the work of a man or woman. And we also made
Capital M, man.
Yeah, and then we made these schools, and of these schools, only 2 survive, and those are the Bene Gesserit and the Mentats. Although we don't really talk about the Mentats.
Although when we talked about the book, I said the 2 schools were Mentats and Bene Gesserit, but then on retrospect, I was like, oh wait, no, the 2 schools are actually the Spacing Guild and the Bene Gesserit.
Yeah.
And they're the 2 schools that do like mental training along with like heavy spice consumption. And I guess the Mentats do too, but the Mentats aren't, and the Mentat training is distinct from the Spacing Guild and the Bene Gesserit. But I think it's more the 2 schools are kind of singled out because it's a specific kind of, it's more of a metaphysical training, and the Spacing Guild is focused on the more masculine aspect of expanding your outward awareness.
Right.
Then the Bene Gesserit is expanding your inward
Yeah.
awareness.
It's what I usually say when you're talking about like woman and male, like female and male self-improvement.
Mm-hmm.
Men think of self-improvement as external. Women think of self-improvement as internal. And that's very much here.
Right.
Where the female school has expanded their inward sight, their ability to completely manipulate their own bodies, to, you know,
Well,
all internal.
even like ancestral memory.
Yeah, and
then the Spacing Guild is all external
yeah,
awareness and
future
manipulation
sight.
of
Yeah.
space and time and seeing into the future. And so the Bene Gesserit have some abilities, almost supernatural abilities related to their inner sight.
Right.
And the Spacing Guild has some somewhat supernatural abilities in that they can literally fold space.
Right.
And they can see into the future and
Yeah.
make predictions. Yeah.
Yeah. So after our mother of all exposition dumps, we drop immediately into seeing the Emperor in his like golden chamber. And I find it interesting because in Dune, the book, nobody ever sees a Spacing Guild like navigator.
Right.
And we don't even get any kind of a description until we see them in Dune Messiah.
Right.
So every adaptation of Dune had to just make this shit up. And so I like to think that the guy that invented this navigator was stumped, couldn't think of anything, decided to masturbate about it. And then when he got done, he was like, balls.
Perfect.
I'll make him look like a giant testicle. Oh my God. Why didn't I think about that before? Oh, and how's he going to fold space? What's that going to look like? Oh, I fucking got it. Ejaculation. Inspiration just seemed to ejaculate from his psyche. He was like, yes, I've got it. It's perfect. And by the time they got all the way through to making it and it showed up in the black tank and it floats out of the orange gas, everyone's like, well, we're in too deep. We're in balls deep, someone might say, and we cannot.
We've invested too much in these effects. We can't
roll this back.
Scrap it and make it again.
We can't roll this back. With the tiny little hands. That's the freakiest part. It's not just a giant testicle.
Well, and the mouth.
Yeah, the
weird mouth
little
part.
mouth with like gas coming out of it, and then it's got the weird little hands.
Yeah.
I don't know. This is definitely one of those. I feel like in the 80s, especially, we were coming off the wave of Star Wars because this releases the year after Return of the Jedi. And everyone was like, well, there's this new thing on the street. It's called sci-fi. What are we going to do with it? I mean, we've had it before. We had some, we had like the black hole. We had Dark Star. We had
I was going to mention Dark Star.
We had some really, we had, 2001 A Space Odyssey. But in terms of like sci-fi as something other than spectacle, as a place to tell epic stories, we're really on the cusp of that because we had Star Trek. Star Trek tried to have Star Trek the movie 1, which is very much like 2001 A Space Odyssey, in which there's a lot of really thoughtful scenes. It's not really fast. It doesn't move. And so we're really finding our feet, finding the formula, finding what works. And we get to Dune, and Dune is a massive undertaking to adapt. And they were kind of like, well, we could adapt the novel, or we could adapt the spirit of the novel. Let's do that. So we make the Bene Gesserits more like witches,
Yes.
mystical beings. We kind of obfuscate the fact that the reason they have these abilities is because they have so completely studied their bodies, and make it more like, well, they're a Bene Gesserit. They just take a bunch of spice and then they can do shit. I don't know what to tell you. And then they make the mentats. Does the spice make your eyebrows grow? Is that what you think? If hard it just pushes the hair out? If a man
consumes a lot of spice, it makes their eyebrows grow.
Yeah. Okay.
If a woman consumes a lot of spice, it makes all of her hair fall out.
Oh, there you go.
There you go. Mentats and Bene Gesserit. And then if you take even more, you turn into a testicle.
Yeah, I feel like somebody got a hold of Jodorowsky's Dune, and they were like, okay, so we need to what we need to do is make them look alien, because I would argue that like the Spacing Guild is a very Giger at like
Oh,
the
yeah.
people in the long black leather, the weird translators, the ooze, the slime, the like
Right. Why does
goo
the tank leave slime behind?
everywhere. They're like leaking it too, like it's coming out of their faces and stuff.
Although I think this movie so the book is written in like third person
Omniscient.
omniscient.
Yeah.
And so you get internal monologues from like almost every character that's present in any scene. And those are a big part of the way the book tells the story.
Yeah.
And this movie did a good job of adapting how the internal monologue contributed to the narrative, but in a film version
Yeah.
where everything is like almost whisper, like sotto voce, quiet, like monotone voiceover.
Yeah.
And I guess that's representative of how people's internal voice sounds. If you have an internal like narrator in your head,
That's how it would
which
sound.
some people don't.
I don't, but I believe you. I recognize this as a mechanism that we use a lot in books because it's helpful for the reader to get. I mean, that's the point of third person omniscient is you can get everyone's internal view of what's happening.
Yeah.
And you can't. There's
Without
no,
them having to say it out loud.
there's no way to organically show that unless you go full Spider-Man across the multiverse. The one with the animated one with
Yeah.
Miles Morales, where we literally did it comic style, so you could have a thought bubble.
Yeah.
Unless you do that, there's no way to convey it without doing this voiceover, and I think it's good. I don't think it's overdone.
Right. Like there was the voiceover in Blade Runner,
Yeah,
which was not that great.
right.
I think partly it just didn't mesh with how they were telling the story.
Well, it was an
Otherwise,
afterthought.
it was an afterthought.
Yeah,
But here, it was planned from the beginning, and I think it's mostly a just audio quality thing. Like they planned how the voices should sound as the internal monologue, distinct from how the character talks just
Yeah.
out loud.
well, we get a
During the
lot
rest
of
of the
the
filming.
actors just standing there thinking.
Yes.
So it feels planned because we're not putting it over them doing something else. We're putting it over them just like staring.
Right. Like we even see them they're just kind of staring off into the distance. And as their internal monologue is going, they're kind of changing their facial expressions or looking at different things. And so it was absolutely planned ahead of time and it was executed well. That is one thing I like about this movie is how
Yeah.
well the internal
I
monologues were
don't think this is a
represented.
bad movie. I think it's a fine movie. I enjoyed this movie a lot when I was younger.
Oh, yeah.
It took us quite a few sit downs to get through this time around.
Just because it's
we don't have
the
3
extended
hours.
version's
Like I don't
3
have
hours
3
long.
hours together to just sit and watch a movie. But I think it's fine as an adaptation for what it is. I think it's good. I don't know why the special effects are so bad. I mean, we're literally the year before this, Return of the Jedi came out, and look what they were able to do with spaceships.
even A New Hope, which was 70, what?
80. Oh no, New Hope is 77.
77.
Yeah.
So 7 years before this, they had A New Hope,
Yeah.
which the spaceships in A New Hope were way better than the spaceship special effects.
You know what
in
I would love?
Dune.
I would love like a mashup of Dune and Jupiter Ascending. You know how in Jupiter Ascending they've had space age technology so long, it's become like like a spectacle. They're like
Right.
floating
It's
castles that
right.
we've dispensed with the flashing buttons and the, kind of the traditional, it's a ship, and made it more like it is a work of art. It is a piece of craftsmanship.
Right. The technology is just another piece of, another cut piece of wood that you put into the thing you're building.
Right. Yeah, that's what I think we should have had, because we've had space travel for, 10,000 years. It is the year 10,191.
Yeah.
Earth is a distant, distant, distant memory. It is legendary, mythical. Earth is mythical. There's no reason for us to cling to the same way that we would envision a spaceship now. But
Right.
this is not. Well, we really saved our creativity for other parts of this because they had to convey the weirding way, right? They had to convey the mashup of mysticism and technology that is the Bene Gesserit weirding way. And so they were like, okay, well, we don't trust our audiences to be able to figure this out, so let's make it a gun. Let's just make it a projectile
we'll just turn
weapon.
it into a gun.
We'll just turn it into a gun.
And that's
It'll be
the
fine.
weirding way.
Yeah.
And it's called the weirding module.
Right. The weirding module, exactly. And they'll use it to shoot weirding bolts at things. Yeah.
What does Paul say? Every thought has a
Some
sound.
thoughts have a sound.
And that sound representative of a form.
Yeah.
Okay.
So Om Cha sounds like a bullet, looks like a bullet, and you can shoot it. So let's just do that. And also Muad'Dib, because my name is a killing word. Patrick Stewart is stellar. Let's just get that
As
out
always.
of the way. As always. I think
Yes.
you could put Patrick Stewart in anything and I'd be like, well, I'm here for this. I'm here for this. I don't know about the mullet in the second act. That was a choice.
That was absolutely a choice
Is it
that somebody
still-
made.
Is it still a mullet if
If you're bald on
if you're
top.
bald on top? If it's bald in the front, long in the back, that has to have a special name, right? It can't just be a mullet.
An elder mullet.
An elder, like an elder millennial, but an elder mullet. I like it. And then this is actually Kyle MacLachlan's first movie. This is
Oh.
his debut. He'd
Nice.
never been in anything else, ever.
So they were getting an unknown for the movie.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yes, they were. And Dean Stockwell asked to be in the movie. Dean Stockwell plays Dr. Yui.
Yep.
And he asked to be in the movie because he was a big fan of the book, which I think is interesting. And a lot of the characters that are in this died of cancer. Like,
It's probably the burning
probably
tires.
the burning tires. Richard Jordan died of like a brain tumor. Trying to think. Some other actors that were in this did as well. And then Jose Ferrer, who plays Shaddam the Fourth, he's actually the dad of Miguel Ferrer, who played in RoboCop. You know, Bob. Is it Bob Morton?
Yeah, whatever in the
I think it's Bob.
the old
Morton.
RoboCop.
Yeah. He also
whatever
played
the,
in
like,
The
marketing guy
Stand,
is.
like the 1990s Stand television show, which is what I always remember him from. him and Gary Sinise.
Oh yes.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, we have some, we have some 80s faces. Like people that in the 80s you would have been like, oh, her. Oh, him. Because Chani also plays in Blade Runner. She's Rachel from Blade Runner. Although she's far better as Rachel than she is as Chani. I really just think that she got no direction. They were just like, be hot. Kiss him. Like, make out passionately. You can do this. And she was like,
that's what your character's there for.
okay, I guess. Because her lines are all very wooden. It's like, tell me of the waters of your homeland, Muad'Dib. Or Usul. She says Usul.
Yeah.
Tell me of the waters of your homeland, Usul.
Except the line that she actually says in the movie is, "Tell me of your homeworld, Usul."
Yeah.
It's like, come on, there's a line, there's a repetition there in
Yeah.
the book for a reason.
You have one job. Like, one job. Just use this one line so we know this is all from Dune, and you're good to go, right? Although I love the opening when they're like, Dune, Arrakis, desert planet. And it's literally just like they gave a guy a camera and had him go out and film the sand. Just,
No, it's
just
like
go
6 inches above the sand.
just go get sand shots, man. So we know that this is a desert. Okay. And we do repeat the Dune, Arrakis, desert planet a sufficient number of times.
Yeah.
Okay, great. I get it. And the worms are dicks. I mean,
Oh, yeah,
clearly the same
absolutely.
guy who invented the Spacing Guild Navigator invented the worms.
It was the same special effects guy.
I want to know who had the worm on a stick that had to just keep shoving it into sand,
pushing it
for
through
that
the sand
scenes. Yeah.
so the face could break out.
Ba 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 ba. Yeah, that part where they're like, and then the like lightning, the static lightning. Oh, yeah, and it's got Jurgen Prochnow, who was actually a voice on the World War Z graphic audiobook.
And in what was the one with Freddie Prinze Jr.?
He is not in Wing Commander.
He's not? I thought
No.
Jurgen Prochnow was the second in
No.
command on the ship.
I don't think so. Oh, is that him?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah, remember,
yes, he
because
is.
we
But I
only
always-
kept calling him Jurgen. We couldn't remember his character's name.
But I get him crossed with the French guy who's in Wing Commander.
Okay.
That's why I was like, he's not, because I know it's the other guy, but you're right, he's in it too. Yeah, we did. We kept calling him Jurgen. That's funny. Go back and listen to the Wing Commander episode. That one's a pretty funny one. Yeah, there's just a lot happening. They had a lot to convey. They had a lot to do. This, of all of the adaptations, this is my favorite still suit.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, the one in the...
Visually, like when I'm reading the books and I'm like, when I get really into a book, it plays like a movie in my head. And if I haven't seen like a film adaptation, the faces are kind of vague. But then if I have seen a film adaptation, it plop fills in the gaps.
Yeah.
And so when I'm seeing certain characters, like Gurney Halleck is always Patrick Stewart in my head.
Yeah.
And Leto, Duke Leto is always
Jurgen Prochnow.
Jurgen Prochnow. And let's see. A lot of the visuals are very, very much from the 1984 Dune movie.
Yeah.
Probably because it was a formative movie
yeah,
for
I was
me.
gonna say it's the first one you watched.
And it's the only one I had watched like when I had read the books.
Gotcha. I remember this being on, and Dad was like, "Oh, you'll like this," and I watched it. So this was the first one I watched. But when I see it, it's usually the 2000 miniseries, but not the 2000
when I think
miniseries.
of Paul, I think of Paul from the Sci-Fi series.
Miniseries, yeah, because Kyle MacLachlan, as much as I love him, I don't know. Again, the chin length dude haircut never works for... Okay, I'm not going to say it never works for anyone. That's a huge generalization. I'm sure there's someone out there for whom this is a stellar haircut. And you know what? I didn't hate it on... Who's the young guy who plays Dune, who plays Paul in the newest
Timothy
Dune?
Chalamet?
Timothy Chalamet. Okay. I don't hate it on Timothy Chalamet. I think because Timothy Chalamet looks young. And so
Yes.
the chin length shaggy haircut, I'm okay with
He
it.
looks like a teenager.
He looks like a teenager. Kyle
Kyle
MacLachlan
does not look
didn't
like a
look like a
teenager.
teenager when he was a teenager. And now you're trying to sell that this man is 15 years old by giving him a boy haircut. It's not, you know what I wanted? I want a haircut change when we move to like the 2 years later.
Right.
I think that would have been a good delineation, and it also would have aged him up slightly. And he always looks really well washed. Like his hair is never greasy. His hair is always coiffed, and it's always parted and like slicked back from his face in just the right way. And I think after a while, I'm just like, I don't believe this hair. This hair is lying
Right.
to me.
Especially with how they describe the Fremen lifestyle in the books. Then you see these characters in the movie where, they're living in the Fremen sieges for years, and
the sieges stink.
and
We cover
they
that
look
lots and lots.
clean and
Yeah.
their hair's always done.
No, only Paul does. Because every time we see Stilgar looks like he just
Even-
rolled around in the
Even
dirt.
Chani's hair.
Yeah, well, Chani's hair's usually pulled back.
Yeah. I mean, but it's like, it looks clean and
Yeah.
it's been freshly, pulled back in a ponytail.
Yeah.
And her face is almost always very clean.
Right.
Unless they're actually out in the dunes of Dune.
Right. Yeah. I don't know. I think it's funny. I kind of agree with Jodorowsky that it's not the best adaptation, but if you just take it for what it is, it's not horrible. They were trying something extremely ambitious.
Oh, yeah. It had to be
The
experimental.
fucking audacity, right, of trying to adapt this novel with the technology that they had for special effects at the time. And for an audience that had not been tested with some really heavy sci-fi yet. So at this point, we have Foundation floating around. We have some pretty heavy sci-fi properties. The Expanse. Wool just got adapted. So we know there is an audience for these really, really hard sci-fi.
But in the 1980s,
But in the 80s, we're
pretty
not
much
there.
all we'd had for epic sci-fi, like mythological epic sci-fi, was Star Wars.
Yeah.
And Star Wars is very like clean, hyper technology. It's very palatable.
Yes. Yeah.
For the audience. And then here's Dune, which
Right.
is a lot more gritty.
And it's a mashup of mysticism and technology.
Right. It's a lot more psychological.
Yeah. Yes. Although this is, when I see Geedy Prime, this is the Geedy Prime that I see. This is the Baron, which it's explained why he has that weird, why he's gross, like why he has pustules and stuff. Pustules. In one of the prequel books. So it would be a Brian Herbert book.
Mm-hmm.
And I wonder, did Brian write that? Because
Did he retcon that?
Did he retcon that? Because in Dune, the book, he's just large. He's a big dude.
Right.
He's not like gross.
Deformed.
And this is because, well, that's kind of a spoiler, I guess. But it's because when he had relations with the Bene Gesserit woman who got pregnant with Jessica, it was not a consensual encounter. And so she poisoned him. And that's why he's gross like that. Okay. And then I love Sting. Again, the audacity of just being like, who can we hire? Who can we cast? Let's get that Rackber guy. He wrote a couple of hit songs.
Here's probably an influence from Jodorowsky's Dune.
Yeah.
Like, Jodorowsky says I'm gonna get
Mick
Mick
Jagger.
Jagger.
Yeah.
Right. I'm gonna get the rock star.
Yeah.
Literally, to be Fade Rotha.
Let's do that. Except this time, let's make it Sting.
Right. We're gonna get a literal rock star from our contemporary.
Right. And my favorite filming story, like trivia story, is that the scene where he comes out of the steam, he was gonna be naked. Sting had agreed to be naked. Everyone was all set for some full frontal nudity for this scene. And then they got scared. The ratings board or the producers got scared. And so they literally hot glued some shit together and taped it up on him on set.
The wing underwear.
Yeah, the wing G-string thing that he's wearing. They macrameed that shit and just slapped it on him because they were like, well, we gotta cover you up.
It would
man.
make it a little too edgy.
Right. And so that's why he's wearing the weird winged G-string thing. I don't know why they chose the character, like the outfit design that they did for the Harkonnens. The weird suit that they're all wearing. I think it's just to make them thematically all the same, maybe, but also it just looks wildly uncomfortable. Like the one that Raban is wearing. This poor actor looks like he would really rather just be wearing nothing because it looks so hot.
It looks
cannot
like
imagine that breathed.
like a sauna suit
Yeah.
where you're literally not it's supposed to make you sweat as much as possible.
Yeah.
That's the fabric that it looks like.
That's exactly what it looks like. And so they get two for Howitt, just like they do in the book. And we have they all have the red stained lips. You know, that's what they make up that rhyme for Piter.
Which, I mean, geez, I was paying attention in the book. Like, where is this, rhyme? Like, where did it come? Maybe it comes from a later book, whatever. But no, they just.
Well, maybe it comes from a later
the
book.
juice of Safu.
Yeah, by the juice of Safu, the thoughts acquire speed, the lips acquire stains, the stains become a warning. It is by will alone I set my mind in motion.
Yeah.
I can't believe I just got to say that. Yeah, so they make that up. I think that's interesting. But then, of course, Piter gets killed, and then we get Twofer. And I think they talk about how they give him a heart plug, which they invented again.
Yet another thing they added.
But the fucking cat,
that they have, he has to milk the cat
you have
for
to
the
take
antidote.
care of this little cat, Twofer, because it contains the antidote for the poison we've fed you. This poor cat looks like, what am I doing? You know that? And it's a sphinx. It's a hairless cat. And so they had to buy this cat. This cat didn't come from I don't know. This is so we have someone on the set making sure animals are not being harmed that it's hard. There's quite a few of those movies where I'm like, oh, I don't know that cat was okay at the end of the day. Like Milo and Otis. Mm-hmm. You love that movie until you find out how many animals died in the filming of that movie. And then you're like, oh shit, it's not cute anymore. How can I enjoy this cute story about a dog and a cat knowing that this, like many cats died to obtain this
to this footage.
So, yeah, some choices were made that make sense, and some choices were made that really just, I don't understand. I do like the Fremen, like, echo chamber when he's giving the speech, and it's just like a long carved tunnel of stone.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, like the assembly room.
Yeah. I would cut out the orgy, though.
Man,
Yeah.
that's always a loss.
We do not cut the orgy out in the Sci-Fi miniseries. No, we don't. And then Jessica disappears after she takes the water of life.
Physically and metaphorically and narratively.
She's just gone. Just gone. And he doesn't have a son that gets killed. And he makes it rain, which I guess Frank Herbert saw this adaptation.
Yeah.
And he said he liked lots of it. But the ending, he was like, no, the ending is shit. Because Paul's not supposed to be a god. Paul is supposed to be a man who believes he's a god.
Right.
So if he can actually make it rain, then
it defeats
the purpose.
Yeah. A big part of this story is like cemented in the line, like, no greater tragedy can befall your society than to be beholden to a hero, or
to have a hero. Nothing harms a society as bad as having a hero, like having a hero show up.
Yep.
Yeah.
And so this whole story, this whole, multi-book narrative is a criticism of this, the savior that comes from outside and then assumes a leadership position and then tells you what to do. The society loses all its agency.
Yeah. Beware prophets fulfilling prophecy.
Right. And so for Frank Herbert to see this adaptation, he's like, yes, here is my, wedge in the whole, like, external savior narrative. This is supposed to be a knife that cuts through that societal mythological bullshit. And then for them to say, oh yeah, he's actually like got superpowers.
Yeah, he's actually got like divine powers. So
he's like that. Undermines
it really
the entire story.
And I mean, maybe because they're not planning a sequel. I don't know if they planned a sequel or not, but if you had then gone from there to Dune Messiah, you couldn't adapt Dune Messiah because, well, we haven't talked about Dune Messiah yet, but it's a lot of undoing what was done. and it's hard to undo. This dude can actually summon water from the atmosphere.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, continuing the conversation about the fact that we confirm he's God at the end is what you do when you do that is you completely invalidate one of the main themes of the novel, which is the subversion of the white savior trope. So when we make him actually God, when we make him actually capable of all these things, it's like, here's a movie about how a 15-year-old white dude can organize and liberate a planet in a way that millions of Fremen have never been able to do on their own. Which is
Right.
the opposite of what Frank Herbert was trying to talk about. He was trying to say, oh, on the surface maybe, but this is actually villainous behavior. Because did he free them, or did he expand the way in which they were enslaved?
Right. Did he just deepen the hold that their entire mythology has on them?
Yeah.
And that's supposed to be kind of implied. It's like carried very heavily in the novel.
Yeah.
Paul is constantly preoccupied by the fact that this new jihad is coming.
Yeah.
It's inevitable. He's doing everything he can to avoid it, or at least like
Mitigate.
mitigate the fallout. And so he's kind of like, what do I do? What do I do? And then once he figures out what to do, he's like, okay, this is the path to minimal damage.
Yeah.
I become the emperor.
He's always taking the path of least destruction.
Right.
But he can never avoid it. And we can't, it's hard to talk about that in this medium, but there were ways we could have worked it in, which we definitely didn't try to do. Also, remember when we watched Legend and we watched both versions, the director's cut that had an actual score and then the theatrical cut had Tangerine Dream as the music?
Yes.
So you know who does the music for 1984's Dune.
I did know it like a week ago.
Toto. I Bless the Rains Down in Africa.
Yeah.
Toto. Toto does the music for this. I want to know who was reading this novel and was like jamming out to some da 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 da, and then they were like, "Oh my god, that would be a great prophecy theme. I should call Toto." Actually, prophecy theme is the only one they didn't do. They did do all the other music. So I want to watch both versions. I want to see Paul Muad'Dib ride a worm to some great orchestral music.
Like Hans Zimmer.
Yeah, like Hans Zimmer style shit. And then I want to watch him ride a worm to an electric guitar sting. And I want to do both. I want the strength to do both. Okay. And we've only got one version. So I'm going to put this out into the universe. We need a Legend style treatment here where we have an actual theatrical score and then we have
need a fan edit
Toto score. Yeah, we need a fan
with an
edit.
alternative soundtrack.
Yes. Like when we watched Lady Hawk, which we're eventually going to do for Strange and Beautiful Book Club. I want someone to take that synthesizer music and make it like orchestrated.
Orchestral, yeah.
Yeah, I want to see the orchestral version of that movie because I think it would have aged a lot better. I think we would have a bigger conversation about how epic Lady Hawk is if it wasn't just some straight synthesizer stuff playing in the background. I mean, it's of its time.
It is.
Yeah, this is around the same time as Highlander. Queen's doing the soundtrack for that one. This is around the same time as Legend. Tangerine Dream is doing that one. It's like that. There's that 4 or 5 year period in Disney where Phil Collins just did every song.
Yeah, that was Phil Collins was the voice of
Disney
sound.
Yeah, he did
Disney music.
Yeah, we didn't even get people singing. Like in Tarzan, nobody ever sings. We just have Phil Collins singing while we do stuff.
Which, to be fair, is pretty good.
Yeah, I mean, come on. It's Phil Collins. Of course, I fucking love it. But I was thinking about that when we were watching it. Like, this is great. It's good. It kind of dates the movie. And we like it because that's kind of our aesthetic.
We like it because that's the first thing we saw,
Yeah.
right? The movies
We imprinted on this
we
movie style.
imprinted on this style of movies.
Yeah.
Growing up, watching, like, we really started, like, remembering the movies that we were seeing in, like, probably starting, like, 1990.
Yeah.
And this would have been like, oh, here's a recent movie that's really good. And, oh, yeah, it's, a rock band doing the entire soundtrack.
It wasn't considered really good at
Well,
the time. It bombed.
I think a family member of mine liked this movie.
Oh, I'm sure.
And so we watched it.
This is one of those movies that got a big second life.
Yes.
Yes. As soon as it came out where you could watch it at home.
The big nerds
Yeah.
would be like, oh, I really like this. But the people who just go to the movies for an entertaining movie would be like, it's a little, like, over the top.
Well, you're dropping this in the era of the hour-and-a-half movie.
Right.
Which I miss sometimes. But I'm going to watch a movie that is twice the length of one of my regular television shows. And then I'm going to go home. And you go to this, and I think even the theatrical cut is over 2 hours. That's a big ask.
It's just over 2 hours.
That's a big ask when you're not used to movies that long.
Right. The audience hasn't been conditioned.
And when you do get movies that long, they're Schindler's List. They're Gandhi. They're these huge historical epics. They're not Dune, which is a huge historical epic about a history that never happened. It's a huge mythological story set in a world that does not exist. And that's challenging. That is challenging, especially for a audience that isn't there yet. I mean, the last time we had that was 2001: A Space Odyssey, really, because 2001: A Space Odyssey is long. And it kind of reminds me of, if you ever listen to early, like, so the Moog synthesizer is invented in, like, the 70s. And then we get this wave of synthesizer bands putting out music, but they're all very like, whoa, 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 just really.
Right. It's a new tool.
Yeah.
A lot of the more, I don't know, progressive experimental bands say, hey, what can I do with this? And they just start doing a bunch of random things.
Yeah.
And then most of it is bad.
Right.
But then you get, just like natural selection in biology, you get natural selection in, media.
Right.
Where everybody's experimenting, trying out just really off the wall stuff. And then every once in a while, people will be listening to all of it and be like, oh, man, I can barely listen to this stuff. And that sounds really good.
Yeah, that one's cool.
Right. And then out of 1,000 variations, there's like, oh, here's 2 ways you can use this thing that work really well. Okay, now we're going to start branching off of those. Right. And so there's a lot of this stuff where it's like, hey, let's throw a synthesizer in here, but maybe we're going to use it like an existing instrument.
Yeah.
Or we're going to use it in a way that doesn't sound good. And now we're kind of stuck with it.
Right. Yeah.
Until we get the orchestral fan edit.
Exactly. But I think this ends up being in the middle of the bloom of what can we do with this.
Yeah.
We have some breakout sci-fi. Oh, okay, maybe this is a medium. Maybe this is a thing. Like, maybe we can make this a thing. And so everyone's got to shoot in the dark because we don't know where the target is. And Star Wars hit the target. But I don't think in 1984, because this was being produced around the same time as, like, Return of the Jedi is coming out. So you're probably already too far in the process to be able to reel this back.
And one of the reasons Star Wars was so successful is because they had Industrial Light and Magic, which I don't think it was called Industrial Light and Magic yet at that point, but it was this special effects team that had figured out some novel, new. They were experimenting with special effects just like everyone else, except they hit on a way to do it really well.
They hit the target.
Right.
Yeah.
And
they started in 1975. Industrial Light and Magic.
Okay, so they started as
by
Industrial
George
Light.
Lucas in 1975. Okay. Yeah.
I wasn't sure if it was called ILM to begin with. So ILM, they were like, we really like hit something here, guys. This is going to be amazing. But they weren't sharing their secrets. They weren't sharing their process with other special effects groups. So all the other special effects groups are behind the curve, but they don't know how to reproduce how ILM is doing things.
Right.
So they have to do their own thing.
Yeah.
Which by definition, since ILM had just jumped ahead in this how do you do special effects, the other studios were just playing catch up. And so even, 7 years later, ILM was probably keeping a lot of stuff really close to the chest until the trilogy was finished, because they didn't want anybody else coming out with equivalent special effects while they were still making more Star Wars movies.
Yeah.
And then by the time any information got out about,
I mean, that proprietary stuff, but also just we're all still figuring this shit out.
Yeah.
We're all still wandering around in the dark.
Yeah.
And a couple of us have kind of found the goal, but not everyone's gotten to the goal yet. It's like early comic book movies. You make the duck one,
Howard the Duck.
Howard the Duck.
Really?
What the actual shit? Like, what the fuck was that movie? And okay, so that didn't work, right? And then we made Spawn. And Spawn was okay. We made a big...
I would say in the same vein is Who Framed Roger Rabbit.
That is iconic.
Right.
Yes.
That everybody's experimenting
Right.
with how do we do
How do we translate
comic book
this
stuff
Yeah.
into a movie? Oh, well, everybody else is like, okay, we're going to make really good, costumes for live actors. We're going to throw in a giant, just over the top CG cape. And
Yes. Such a big deal was made about that cape.
then you have Who Framed Roger Rabbit. We're literally going to just draw cartoons.
Yeah. And we're going
And-
to put a real life guy in it who ended up being nominated for an award.
Right.
Because how spot on he was.
Because it worked so well.
Right.
And
Like Cool World.
yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Cool World was like, Who Framed Roger Rabbit worked really well. Let's do that again. Like, technology wise, style wise,
Yeah.
with a different story.
Right. Yeah.
Yep.
Very much so. And then we kind of hit our stride at Blade. Blade's considered the savior of the comic book movie.
Right.
Because we make Blade the first Blade movie. And it's like, oh, we can do this. We can make this work.
Yep.
How do we recreate that? And we don't really recreate that until we get Iron Man. And then
Right.
Iron Man
And
is
a
like,
lot of that is because, like, a
We've
lot of
got
the
it.
reason Blade worked so well is a lot of it was just the tone,
yeah,
the atmosphere of the movie, but also they like minimized the special effects.
yeah. There's some right at the
There's
end,
a little bit,
but not.
right?
Yeah, not in the way. Yes, and then we get Iron Man, and now we've been running on the same treadmill for so long. Everyone's tired and they want to hop off. So we're ready for our next. Okay, where are we going now? I think that's why. I think that's why it feels like movies are miss right now. Is we're just ready. We're
Yeah.
ready. We like periods of experimentation. That's when we get cool movies like this, like Dune, where people are like, let's grab Dune. Let's take this tome off the shelf and see what we can fucking do with it. I think we can probably make this work. And I think if you asked David Lynch, he would say, no, we did not make this work. But as a fan of Dune, it's not horrible. It's not horrible. If you move
Right.
past some of the special effects, you move past some of the acting, it's okay. For what they had to work with, for the material they had to work with, they were trying to convey. There's a lot. I mean,
Right.
yeah,
Like
in a
it's
single movie, how do you like even now the newest Dune adaptations are series. No one's
Right.
trying to tackle this in a single movie again.
and the book, most of it is like not action. It's dialogues.
Yes, there's very very little action.
And but the films, action works really well. Action sells.
Well, yeah, action sells.
And so how do you make this movie where you're telling the story, but not have a lot of actiony stuff happening?
Yeah.
And so I think that's why we get a big info dump so that we can skip a lot of the dialogue-y, like dialogue heavy scenes
Dialogue exposition scenes.
because we did all that up front.
I mean, this movie's necessary. This movie gets us to Dune 2000.
Yes, it's a necessary step in the path.
Yeah.
It's like I worked at a startup right out of school.
Yeah. Was it the
and
best? No.
It was.
We
It
learned
was
a
a
lot,
challenging place to work.
Yeah.
It like just lifestyle wise, it was a startup. We had to buy our own health insurance because the company had like less than 10 employees, whatever. And I learned a lot. I grew a lot. And I learned like how to say no a little better.
Yeah. Yeah, it wasn't great, but it was necessary.
But yeah, it was a necessary step in the path.
Right.
For me to get here. Dune was Dune 1984 movie was a necessary step kind of in the whole development of the genre.
Yeah. Yeah. And if Kyle MacLachlan hadn't been in this, he wouldn't have been in Twin Peaks. He wouldn't have been in Flintstones.
Yeah.
Which is what I always remember him from. I'm like, oh, the guy from Flintstones? Like Halle Berry. Halle Berry is in that too.
She is in Flintstones.
Secretary. Yeah.
Yep.
And Rick Moranis. We should do
do Flintstones for the podcast?
No. You want to talk about throwaway 90s movies? That's a good one. I need a Dick to Bird. It just yells at me every time I try to do something. Like a bullshit radar for me. That would be really good. All right, we segued into I was like, how do I get back from Flintstones? Because I was just like, Dick the Bird. I mean, I think this is a good place to wrap it. Everything that people want to say about this movie has been said. It's not perfect. Yeah. It's okay. It's a necessary step. I think it's fine. I enjoy it. I like Patrick Stewart in this.
It is rewatchable.
It is rewatchable. Yeah. If, when that was our scale, I would say it would be. Yeah, I've rewatched it plenty.
Yeah. And that is a valuable metric.
And I feel like they created a consistent aesthetic. Like the Fremen have a consistent aesthetic. I think the Harkonnens have a consistent aesthetic. The Shaddam IV and all of his entourage, even his spaceship, everything has a very consistent, in the way that Jodorowsky wanted everyone to have their own theme, even their own music producer. We kind of carried that over in that every single family has a style.
Right.
And even when Paul stops being Paul Atreides and becomes Paul Muad'Dib, he changes his style to be more Fremen. Including Lady Jessica, who Matt was like, is that supposed to be Jessica? At the very end. Because
I couldn't tell if it was the same actress even.
Right.
And but that's one of the, like, every once in a while, like when Paul's talking in the big, like, auditorium.
Yeah.
She's in the background, like in her Reverend Mother
otherwise
outfit.
Disappears. Yeah.
But she doesn't interact with anybody. She doesn't talk. She doesn't.
And there's like Reverend Mothers lined up along the top. Did you notice that? But they're all like.
Right. And I think that's supposed to be like, because later, actually, I don't think they have. They don't have a gathering of all the Sietches in Dune the book.
Yeah, they do. They do when she takes the water of life, or later. They do. They don't gather all the people. They just gather all the leaders, the naibs. Yeah, they gather the naibs.
Oh, and isn't that where Alia got captured from? That gathering?
No, she just gets captured from
Sietch Tabor.
No, they have that southern Sietch, like the really far away Sietch that they go to hide.
The one that's 20 worm.
Yeah, 20 thumper. It's
away.
A 20 thumper ride. Yeah, he'll be like, gather the naibs we must discuss.
Oh, I thought Alia was closer to Arakeen.
No, that's why it's only women and
women,
children, and old people, because they've sent away the weakest to go.
To protect them.
To protect them.
Yeah.
the quote weakest.
Right. The
Yeah.
weakest of the Fremen
The weakest
can still
of
take
the
out
Fremen. Yes.
Sardaukar.
Yeah, weakness being a relative term here.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, they gather the Naibs. When they gather the Siege, that's when they have the orgy. Because
Right.
they're all connected already anyway.
They gather the siege together. Jessica converts the water of life. They have the orgy with the converted water of life.
In the book.
In the book.
Yeah, because we don't even discuss
here,
that it's like
right.
that she's changing it. She just takes it and survives it.
Yeah,
Although
we don't.
Why we chose to do when he's going to take the water of life, we're going to take him out into the middle of the desert and tie him up. It was it only so that we could have the worms show up.
Right.
Yeah, I think that's why.
Yeah. The whole angle of he can talk to the worms.
Yeah, he can summon the worms.
Was in the same vein as he can just make it rain.
Exactly.
Maybe not.
Maybe not. I don't know. He has power over the natural
planet.
world, apparently. I don't know. It's an interesting choice. They had to do it. I mean, they had to make him larger than life because otherwise it is just like a straight white savior narrative.
In the I guess the story that they were telling.
Yeah.
As interpreted from Dune, the book.
As interpreted from, yeah. As adjacent to.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was in the room while they wrote the script. Is that what you mean?
Yeah.
That one?
Yeah.
Okay.
The seltzer water of Dune.
Yeah.
They wave the book over the movie.
Yes, the seltzer water of Dune. Yeah, the mildly flavored seltzer water called Dune. That's my favorite one about LaCroix water is it's the soda of a dystopian future.
Right.
Yeah. It's accurate then. I like the ungainly vessel that they keep the water of life in. That's like they have to tip it so far to be able to use it.
Like the decanter or whatever.
Yeah, the weird little decanter.
Yeah, it's like huge. Yeah, really awkward to carry.
Although one would argue that the Fremen should have tons of glass objects because they live in sand. So glass should be their main material.
But then in the book they make a lot of plastic stuff literally out of spice.
Yeah.
That's probably like when they refine the spice, they get a bunch of byproducts.
Yeah.
And those byproducts can be used to
make other stuff.
Make synthetic things like plastic.
It's interesting that he included that because plastic was really in its like infancy in the 60s.
Right. And I think that's one of the reasons the technology of the Fremen like is still kind of sticky.
Yeah.
In the reader's head is because that was like almost prophetic.
Well, plastic was like the new hot thing. It was like that was science. It wasn't ubiquitous.
Right.
It was like oh my God, plastic. That's like a luxury material. When he was writing the book. Tupperware, exactly. You had to go to special parties to get it and stuff. Yeah. It wasn't just...
I wonder if spiceware is a big thing in the Dune universe.
That would be really funny to have like a Shaun of the Dead version of Dune, but it's like a Fremen who is in a third, like what do they call them? A multi-level marketing scheme where they're selling spice products.
Yes.
Yeah.
One of the people that like live the like ex-Fremen that lives in the city.
Yeah.
That would be an amazing like offshoot series, spin-off series.
Yeah.
To have like here's one of the like cities on Arrakis and here's just the bystander, the sitcom of the planet Dune.
Yeah, there's one guy just fresh out of the desert, and then one person who's lived in the city their whole life, and one person who came from the desert but's been in the city for years.
Yeah, like they couldn't, they weren't up to par, like living out in the deep desert.
Yeah.
In the Sieges, and they're like, I just couldn't handle it, man.
Right, and the Fremen,
all the deadbeats, like have a room to, like
and
an apartment together.
The fresh out of the desert guys constantly like, I invoke Amtal. No, dude, we don't do that here. Like, you can't just knife everybody that bumps into you on the street. He's like, yes, I can.
I claim his water. No,
Yeah.
dude.
No.
Dude.
No.
He doesn't.
Stop.
He doesn't have water.
We can just turn the tap on. That's not a thing here. It's fine. What magic is this? Somebody leaves the water running for the cat, and he's like, "We've grown water fat."
Or they're like real Fremen, like aunt comes to visit them for their birthday or something. I think we got some.
Yeah, won't take off
Some
the still
material
suit,
here
and
we
they're
can
trying to
work
get
with.
her. They're trying to get her to bathe the entire time she's there. Don't you want to take? Do you want to wash? Do you want to? Do you want to get clean? You got kind of a smell. This is the smell of home. It's the smell of the desert.
This is how it is known that I am a true follower of the way.
Yeah, that'd be really funny. Yeah, like Lower Decks. Isn't that the one where it's like Star Trek, but it's the people that
Yeah, it's like the sitcom of Star Trek.
like the sitcom of Star Trek. That's exactly what it needs. All right, well, I think this feels like a really good place to wrap it up. After this, we'll be talking about the sci-fi miniseries adaptation of Dune.
Are we going to do the books first? Okay. The sci-fi miniseries of Dune the book.
Dune the book, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, because we're eventually going to be reading Dune Messiah and Dune Heretic.
Children of Dune.
Children of Dune.
I always mix up Dune Messiah and Heretics of Dune.
Yeah.
And I always want to call it, the second book in the series is Dune Heretic.
No,
it's not.
Dune Messiah and Children of Dune, because those three books in particular have screen adaptations. So
Right.
That's why we're focusing on them in particular. So we're going to do that. And if they're talking about delaying the second part of Dune, so if they delay the second part of Dune, we'll add the last three books in the series. I think that's fair.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea.
And then we'll do the entire canonical 6.
Yes.
Yeah.
So the plan for this deep dive,
Now that we're 5 episodes into it.
that we're 5 episodes into it, I'll just real quick outline it. We're planning to release these episodes on a cadence that we will finish all of our episodes right before Denis Villeneuve's Dune Part 2
Unless
comes
they
out
keep
in
moving the
theaters.
target.
Unless they keep moving the target.
But it's fine.
But
It'll be good.
The plan for what we're going to cover is we did Dune the book,
Yeah.
Jodorowsky's Dune,
Yes.
which somebody at work told me about it. And after we watched it, I messaged him. I was like, I just want to say thank you for introducing me to Jodorowsky.
I feel like Jodorowsky is the movie filmmaker that we would really that we like.
Yeah.
That's the approach we like. What is this paper? What is this? It's meaningless. Where he pulls out the money and he's
Yeah.
like, is this why I'm doing this? This meaningless scraps of paper? Puff.
Okay, so Dune the book, Jodorowsky's Dune, Dune the movie,
Yeah.
and then we're going to do the sci-fi miniseries adaptation of Dune the book,
Yes.
and then we're going to cover Dune Messiah and Children of Dune,
Yeah.
and then we're going to cover the sci-fi miniseries Children of Dune, which is a combination
mashup.
of
Yeah.
Dune Messiah and Children of Dune story. And
James McAvoy. Go ahead.
And then that would be the end of our Dune deep dive. I guess we're going to do an episode on Denis
Dune
Villeneuve's
Part 1.
Dune Part 1.
Yes.
Right. And so that's our
if we've
plan
got
for the deep
time,
dive.
We'll throw in the rest of the canonical 6, the final 3.
Yeah.
Yeah. If they move the target and we've got time. If not, maybe we'll add them later. I'm not sure. But right now the plan is only the first 3 books because those are the ones that have screen adaptations.
Right.
Yeah.
And then Denis Villeneuve announced that he wants to do one more.
Yes. So we can add that on too.
Yeah. I wonder if he'll
It's
do...
our podcast network. We do what we want.
And then when we do Dune Part 2 and the other books and maybe Dune Part 3, you'll get notified when those episodes come out, and we'll post that on the Instagram too.
Yeah, sounds good. All right, until next time, friends.
Bye.
Bye.